Welcome to Liberty Action Alert with Greg Seltz, sponsored by our friends at the Lutheran Center for Religious Liberty here in Washington, D.C. A program that cuts through the chaos and confusion in the culture today by talking to kingdom citizenship, bold biblical principles for a robust public Christian life. And now your host, Dr. Greg Seltz.
Good day, Washington, D.C., and friends of the program all across the country. I'm Greg Seltz. Welcome to Liberty Action Alert. Today on the program, we are privileged to have again with us Captain Greg Muehler. He is the director of the LCMS Ministry to the Armed Forces. And Captain Muehler, we're talking again about, abortion and the military, and it almost blows your mind, the kinds of things that we're discussing here, because I thought the military was supposed to defeat our enemies, blow up things, break things, win, and then that's their job. We just told them it's this very limited thing we need you to do this. Well, now we find out that they're using the military to actually provide abortion services. Now, this is obviously only for military members, I would imagine, but they're using taxpayer dollars to do that. Am I right on this? Is that what's going on? And then Senator Tuberville is standing up against this. Let's talk about what that's all about too. Well, first of all, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Greg. It's always good to be here. And yeah, you summed it up pretty well. I think, last time we had talked, it was, trying to use the VA centers as
right.
abortion centers in the red states, but now the Department of Defense realized, I think they've already got some court cases against them there, so decided we'll try it a different way by providing funded orders, which means for the non-military people that basically the military is going to pay for the female mom to drive to a state or a place location where she could have the abortion, pay for the lodging, per diem, the travel. The only thing they're not going to do is not going to pay for the actual procedure, but they're going to travel, pay for the actual getting them there, and then, whatever 2, 4, 5, 6 days, whatever that administrative leave will be. Of course, they avoid strenuously of using the word abortion. They call it healthcare, or whatever, they have misnomer all that. But bottom line, and why I respect the senator, is that's really a violation of the law. And I think for him to stand up like that, it's a violation of the Hyde Amendment. It's still taxpayer money, even if it's a military policy. Military Department of Defense can't just come up with a policy that goes against the law.
Right.
The law says you can't use taxpayer money to fund abortions. They try to play mind gymnastics with, well, we're not really funding for the abortion. We're just paying to get them there. And, and so I really respect him. And people say, well, the numbers aren't that big. But the problem is it's put so much pressure on these new moms that if you want to be promoted, if you want to deploy, if you want to, succeed in the military, you're going to have to get this abortion, because if you don't, you're going to hurt your career and you're not going to be as competitive, in the promotions and so forth, which is simply not true. And then on the other hand, the military just passed some great parental leave policy where it's almost 3 months. I think it's 12 weeks. So if the mom chooses to have the baby, they are going to give her a good time to go take care of the baby, and so forth. But the bottom line for the military, when you read between the lines on their RAND report, I think we talked about that a little bit last time I was on. It's all money. They'd rather fund 5 days of temporary duty and have the mom female back into the fight versus giving them 2.5 to 3 months off. And then they bring up the term readiness. And as we know, that it's just another red herring, because the statistics are there if they'll just look at them, of the mental health after an abortion, especially women who have felt pressure to get it because of career choices rather than just because their choice.
Right.
They're really kind of pressured to do it. So there's the guilt, the remorse, which takes them out of the fight even more than the paternity or fraternity leave. So anyway, out of the situation.
Yeah, I mean, on a grander scale, we're literally putting laws in place that pressure men and women to not be family people. I mean, we're just doing that. we talked even with guys, even with their careers, we used to counsel them, don't put your career. I mean, I know you got to make money to pay for your family, but your family's the most important thing. Now we have men who could care less about their families, and now we're even pressuring women to care less about their families, as if the culture can survive the dissolution of a mom and a dad caring for their families first and foremost. And like you just said, I think it's misogynistic to actually, abortion is the most chauvinistic thing you can do to a woman, because what it really does say, if you think of it the other way, not just my body, my choice, which is what they say, but if you think it the other way, we're saying you men, you don't have any role in this. You don't have any responsibility. $200, $250, that's the cost of an abortion or something like that. So the guy throws $200 at the woman and says, take care of it. It's your business. And you're saying, wait a minute. When did we in the old days, if you got this girl pregnant, you got the dad said, you're going to own up to your responsibility, young man. You're going to, you're going to provide for this family and this child. We're pushing all of that to the cultural edge as if we can create a better culture. And then, like you said, these word games, I was in these meetings too on the Hill, where they're saying we're not violating the Hyde Amendment, and we're saying, but you're providing everything up to the point where the doctor comes in and kills the kid, but that's not abortion services. And you're right. It's they're lying to you, and that they're telling you fibs and false truths, and somehow they do it with a smile on their face. So Tuberville said, no, we're just not doing this. So talk a little bit too. So he stood up now. And I know it's a procedural thing he's doing, but he's kind of saying, we're holding up kind of promotions or something until we get this thing resolved. Is that kind of what's happening procedurally?
He just recently wrote a op-ed article for the Wall Street Journal. I think it was published Tuesday or Monday, and explaining it too. But basically he's saying, I'm not stopping them because I can't stop them. He's just forcing them they would have to vote on the floor for every promotion, which of course would be time consuming. I think there's like 178. And my understanding also, it's just the senior leadership. He's not stopping all the promotions.
Right.
It's just for flag in general. And, it's just kind of the process that, and he pointed out, it's been used before. It is a political way of saying, we got to take a look at this. This is not ethical or legal or whatever. So God bless him for standing strong. And I know that there'll be people that'll going to break ranks and, do you really want the bad press and so forth? But if you really do believe, as he does in the statement, the military's purpose, as you said, Greg, defend our country.
Yeah, that's right.
And then he brings up a good point that, we're kind of winking at we're 15,000, the Army's 15,000 below on recruiting. That's a whole division.
Yeah, and let's get to that, because that's the real issue, right? And Biden and the department are deciding, no, we got to start using social engineering stuff. That's what the military needs to be doing right now, which is actually weakening our military, because that's just not what the point of the military is, not to be in the abortion industry. By the way, that's one of the things that used to always get me. I used to say to people, it's one thing, this abortion, not abortion, but to actually create an industry for children's, limbs or cells or whatever. And then to say, I can just see a doctor counseling people, you might want to give that up, because then he can use those body parts and make a little cash. And I'm just saying, you don't want to do that. You do not want to start creating something where human beings can be viewed that pragmatically. And here's a division that's very specific, that's supposed to defend our country. And we're getting them into that kind of conversation. That's just scary beyond belief, right?
Oh yeah, it's absolutely. And in fact, even before the Supreme Court ruling, it was clearly illegal for nobody to even push the envelope of the government paying for an abortion, and it was never an issue. And all of a sudden now it's a issue of readiness. And again, we're not talking a huge number, but it's just like, why they've always allowed them for the life of the mother, incest and rape, even in the military, which again, as pro-lifers, we can disagree on that too, but at least to limit it. But I think, for me, and I appreciate you having me on the show, for me, it's just that I just want to rally support for this freshman senator who's really stepped into the gap. And again, it's not about him. He's very clear. He's just saying we can't just make policy that goes against the law. However, if that changes, it may become that way. But right now, it's against the law, and they're just playing games with the law, like you said, doing everything up to
The Hyde Amendment was again, folks, the Hyde Amendment was bipartisan. All people on both sides of the aisle, they said, okay, whatever your views on this. In fact, a lot of times the issues that I deal with, people think, well, what's your opinion on this? Or what's the church's opinion on this? Honestly, that's not even the issue. It's what's the state's role in this. And our founding fathers realized that the coercive power of the state could easily become corrupt and tyrannical if you gave it all these powers it didn't deserve. And so honestly, whatever your opinion of abortion is, okay, so let's say you're pro-abortion or you're pro-choice, or like you said, for the sake safe, legal, and rare, which is how they used to euphemize it, right? Okay, fine. All we're saying is the state should have nothing to do with this. They shouldn't be paying for any of this stuff. That's our main argument. And again, it's just interesting. They start using the word readiness, which you just said, and then they're getting around the Hyde Amendment. And both ways they're actually working against the views of the very people who elected them, both Democrats and Republicans.
Right. Well, I was going to say, because right now, they can get an abortion. They just have to do it on their own dime.
Right.
They could still get a friend or somebody to drive them to a place where it's legal, and they could take leave, regular, and the government doesn't have to pay a dime. And
right.
Another thing, Greg, I wanted to talk about is I've had some Christian leaders, commanders, reach out to us, because once again, it puts them in the conundrum, because commanders are the ones that have to sign those orders to allow them to go. Well, they basically are their orders for a reason. They're
right.
being directed.
Right.
This is your place of duty. So your place of duty is now to drive across the state to this place for reproductive health, or whatever they call it.
Mm-hmm.
And then that commander, the Christian commander, has to sign it. Why do we put them in that position? Again, their job should be deciding, what kind of training for war should I do? What kind of education do they need to fix this equipment? Instead, we're making them, sweat and discern and over.
And even not only violate their conscience, but violate the law. In their minds, they could be going, and I'm supposed to uphold the law. That's the whole point. We don't want the military to start to actually ask, well, should I obey the law of the land or not? Is there a new way around it or not? We don't need that kind of thing going on at the higher levels of these kinds of decisions. That's why we have constitutional limitations on power, because the last thing you want is powerful people starting to skirt that, because they're going to take away your rights eventually when it's all said and done. Well, let's get to that other issue you were talking about, which is, because Tuberville said it too, right? Actually, the capacity for readiness is under assault because recruitment's way, way down, right?
Yep. Yeah. I know the Army didn't make it. I think I just heard latest that they're not sure the Navy and Air Force are going to make it either. The Marines might be. I'm not. Again, I don't know the exact numbers, but we all know it's down.
Yeah, people are starting to ask the question, well, if I'm going to go into this and I'm going to honor the country, and then they're going to be doing this kind of stuff to us while we're fighting. Yeah, I hope the Navy made it. I'm wearing my Navy hat today. I'm wearing my Navy-based Coronado hat. And I just, when I saw Craig, he said, hey, nice hat. And I remember I got a chance to speak to the chap. I can't even remember when it was, maybe back in 2013 or whatever, but I came down to San Diego, the base in San Diego. We talked for many, many days. And I remember when those planes took off, it was right near my hotel, man, and everyone kept saying, sound of freedom, Pastor,
yep,
sound of freedom.
That's right. And that's what we need to be focusing on, not dragging these poor commanders into a conundrum. But I really like your point about the policy. Mm-hmm. Here's a commander getting ready to sign the orders. They know the law says taxpayers aren't supposed to pay for this, but now they have a policy.
Well, sometimes, because we talk about, we have these movies where, you got this directive and you look and you're going, there's a higher calling or there's a higher law. Well, this isn't a higher law. This is a lower law. This is actually using governmental power and force to, it was really interesting in the Dobbs case, because people said, well, what was the big difference about the Dobbs case and Roe v. Wade and all that? I said, first of all they said was that Roe v. Wade is not a constitutional issue, that abortion is not a constitutional issue. There is nothing in the Constitution. Oh, by the way, if you want to put it in, like we put prohibition in the Constitution, it wasn't there. There's a process to do it. This was just some guy saying it's in there, even though you can't see it. The second thing was this, for the first time ever, the idea of viability. The idea of viability was all the other times it was procedural stuff. This was the core issue. If a human being is not fully viable, does the state give another person power to actually dismiss that life, whether that life wants to be snuffed out or not? And for the first time ever, we were actually dealing with the real issue. And at the day of the protest there, we were talking to some people, and I finally said, do you know that's what's at issue here? That the state can determine that your life's not worth living, that your innocent life is not human. And once they do that, then they can do by force, and you can't stop it. I said, do you want to live in a place where they can do that to you, whether it's a child in the womb or an older person, and all these kinds of things? And this is crazy, because these were people who disagreed with us. They said, "Oh, we didn't think you could think that way anymore. We used to believe that." And I thought, wow. So sanctity of life is precious. That's one of the reasons why people go into the military, to defend their country. And when they're not just defending a country, they're defending the people in that country. They're putting their lives on the line to do that. And now when they see this kind of view of life now being shoved into the military process, there's a lot of people saying, well, I don't know if I want to sign up for that. That's just not a good thing. Yeah, the other thing that we talked about, the egregiousness of the vax mandates and stuff, I think they asked, well, why don't you bring those 10,000 people back on board? And didn't they say no?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know it's so crazy. It's called the early bird, which is basically Military Times. You can get it every day for all military people interested in military news. And one day in the same issue, there was one article that said they may allow those who refuse to be vaccinated back in.
Okay.
And the next article was those who refuse to be vaccinated may still be punished. So there's still confusion. And so, I mean, and how does it not affect recruiting? You don't even know what the strategic communication is. Am I allowed back in? Am I not? Of course, as we've heard, even some of these in like the Navy SEAL, I know Mike Berry's been your guest, and
yes,
I think at the end of the day, I don't know if they'll even want to come back after the way they've been treated and disrespected and basically abandoned, and well, they were just trying to make a conscious decision. And I think that's, again, going back to his commanders. It's like I worked hard to command troops to basically keep us free, and now might be sending a mother off to kill her baby, or am I going to be supporting all these issues? Someone transitioning and puberty block. I mean, it's endless.
It blows your mind. And so here's one of the reasons why I like to have you on the program a lot too, because I really believe that if the chaplain, if this kind of stuff can knuckle under chaplains and knuckle under Christians in military, that it starts to flow into the culture. I really believe that if there's a backstop that you guys can push back on and it works out, and everyone, like you said, we're not, you're still, people could still get an abortion. They just have to pay for it, that kind of thing. And all that, when I see what you're under, then I realize if it gets past you, like if you get run over, if our conscience rights gets run over at that level in the military, well, then I'm telling our church people, it's coming for your preschools. It's coming for your schools. They're not going to stop, because sometimes people think, well, it's just a military issue. Dr. Seltz, why do you care about this? And I said, well, I care about it because we've got good people in the military, but I'm saying culturally, this is kind of where, if we can't figure out how to get along at this level with you chaplains in the military, wow, when it'll explode out onto us. And then it's kind of like a tidal wave that I'm not sure how it's going to stop. So give some advice. First of all, why should church people think about this? It's an important issue to me, the work I do on the Hill, but I think the average citizen, the average Christian citizen, moral citizen, they should be very concerned about this.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that, Greg, because I think that's why I appreciate having me on your show, is because wherever you are in this America, whether you're in a city or rural America or whatever, as you said, it's going to touch all of us. And I think the military, we're all taxpayers. We're all in this together. And I think, as you mentioned, the military is an organization that used to just be pretty clear on their mission and goals. And it wasn't other than, providing a defense and freedom of our rights. And then now we're starting to deny people their rights within that organization. It just gets to be pretty scary. So I think it's just to bring attention to it, that the fact that there's even a movement that the military, who is supposed to be under civilian leadership, with the Congress, is for everything else, but that they would have the audacity to just basically write a policy that goes against the clear intent of the law that we have is a bad sign. I mean, when will they drop the line? I mean, when do they think that they have the right answer anyway? So,
I mean, First Amendment stuff, I always tell people the First Amendment obviously holds unless we just run over it. But the people that we're dealing with, they don't have a problem violating it if you won't stop them. That's I didn't realize that. I thought, if they found out, we violated the First Amendment, or we violated religious liberty protection. Oh shoot, we shouldn't have done that. Let's back up. No, they're like, sue us, stop us. And that arrogance is something that I wasn't expecting on the Hill. But then I realized the Hill is power, folks. The Hill is not, and all we're asking people to do is the government should be like a good referee. They shouldn't call, or a good umpire, they shouldn't call balls and strikes one way for one team and another way for another team, and they shouldn't introduce laws that they expect for these people to have to follow, but these people don't. And that's exactly what we're starting to see through all of these different policies that are so egregious. And we said, well, we passed the law. Everyone's supposed to honor that, and the ref's supposed to call the game that way. And then you find out they go, I don't care, kick me out of the game. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess we got to kick you out of the game. I don't know how else we play. And I think that's what you're trying to say, that as a people, as a civil, humane people, this is where it's messing up the military. But this kind of stuff could mess us up where we can't even be neighbors to each other. And that's why this stuff's so very important. How can we continue to pray for you and the kind of work that you have to do with this kind of stuff every day?
Well, I think it just, as you mentioned, we discussed too, that can't forget that all of these members of the military are, souls and individuals who struggle in their own life. And that's why chaplains exist, is to bring the light into a very dark world. And we've said, when I recruit pastors to be chaplains, it's a mission field that is just ripe for the harvest, just because, again, they're not necessarily anti-religious. They just don't know anymore, but they need hope and healing. I mean, another classic example, it's a whole other topic, is just the suicide rate in the military, because there's hopelessness and helplessness. So praying for us is that pray for more chaplains to step into the gap, because they need us. I mean, in the military is the leadership.
Yeah, it's a tough job too. You have to do difficult, in some, what we call lesser of two evils things, which is always hard to live with in your conscience. And then, like you said, if you have no place to deal with that, to resolve that, then I didn't know. Let's talk about the suicide stuff another time, because that, like you said, that's ultimately what our concern is. And we're being told that we can't be ourselves even in the military, and that's why we have to fight this, right?
Yes, right. So I would say the number one prayer is just send more laborers into the harvest.
Okay, more chaplains. We'll do it.
And pray for them and their safety, those who are still doing dangerous jobs, even in peacetime, and, the uncertainty of the sabers rattling and all that. That's what they really need to be focused on, and not these cultural wars. They just need to be banding together as a one unit and getting ready to take care of each other into battle, spiritually and physically.
Great. Well, we will do that. And so I say to all the people that listen to this program, pray for the chaplains who are at work, pray for more laborers in the field, and pray for those who are fighting for our freedoms because they care about the very people that live in the neighborhoods. They're fighting for everybody on both sides of the aisle, and so we shouldn't be politicizing this. I said sound of freedom, right? And that, the planes taking off and the power and all that. Well, our founding father said that's a certain kind of freedom. It's a temporal freedom, and we're going to limit that. We need to do it right. We need to do it well. There's another sound of freedom. He is risen. He is risen indeed, as we celebrated the Easter season. That's the only one that really lasts, because that's the one that gives purpose in the middle of all this craziness. But those are two freedoms we celebrate on this program, and we're so happy to have you, Chaplain Muehler, and God continue to bless you in the work that you do for us.
Thank you, and blessings on your ministry too, and the great work that you do.
Thanks for tuning in today. To get to know our LCRL-DC work better, check out our website at lcrlfreedom.org. Contained there are resources to empower your public square dynamic discipleship. Or check out our weekly Word from the Center opinion piece every Friday at facebook.com/LCRL Freedom. Till next time, God bless you always. I'm Greg Seltz. Have a great week.
You've been listening to Liberty Action Alert with Greg Seltz, Executive Director of the Lutheran Center for Religious Liberty in Washington, D.C. This program has been brought to you by the Lutheran Center for Religious Liberty.